Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South. All right then, let's get started. On the show this week, the US and Israel jointly attack Iran. Will it lead to a regime change in Tehran or drag the world into another endless war? A historic embrace in Jerusalem, from the Modi hug to a powerful address to Israel's parliament. The personal chemistry between Prime Ministers Modi and Netanyahu was on full display. We tell you why Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel is a game changer for the region and the world, and how a love interest leads officials in Mexico to a drug lord's hideout and end his reign. We're diving straight into a story that's shaking the world. On 28th February, Israel and the US launched a coordinated attack on Iran. The massive escalation came just 8 months after the 12-day war between Israel and Iran in June 2025, and importantly, in the midst of indirect talks between the US and Iran, mediated by Oman. Now, Israel described it as a preemptive strike, while US President Donald Trump called it the start of major combat operations aimed at neutralizing threats from the Iranian regime. The attacks were codenamed Lion's Roar by Israel and Operation Epic Fury by the US. Explosions rocked Tehran and beyond, with plumes of smoke rising over the capital's skyline. The first wave of airstrikes reportedly hit the compound housing Iran's 86-year-old supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Now, it was a symbolic but direct shot at the heart of the regime. Other blasts echoed in Isfahan, home to major nuclear facilities, Qom, a religious and strategic hub, Karach near Tehran, which has military installations, and Kermanshah in the west, which houses missile bases. Now, US and Israeli officials said that the goals were to, 1, dismantle Iran's missile and military capabilities, 2, obliterate its nuclear program, and 3, ultimately push for regime change. President Trump called on the Iranian people to take over the government. He called on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to lay down its arms or face certain death. But Iran didn't sit idle though. It fired back almost immediately, targeting a US military base in Bahrain. Explosions were reported in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, targeting US assets. Israel heard air raid sirens as incoming fire lit up the skies. Now, this tit for tat is spreading fast, pulling in allies and risking a wider war. These strikes signal President Trump's impatience and a willingness to act unilaterally. At the same time, they could force Iran to harden its stance. For the world, it raises oil prices, rattles markets, and heightens fears of a nuclear arms race or broader conflict involving Russia or China. President Trump, who promised no new wars, admitted that American lives may be lost as he launched the attack on Iran. So has he given up on his quest for the Nobel Peace Prize? And if that is true, will he drag the world into another endless war? That's the question. And now to another landmark event that's making waves across the globe. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has concluded a high-stakes 2-day state visit to Israel, his first in 9 years, leaving behind a trail of powerful symbolism and a dramatically upgraded partnership. It wasn't just any trip. It was Prime Minister Modi's second to Israel after his groundbreaking visit in 2017, which, by the way, was the first ever by any Indian Prime Minister. But this one, which took place on 25th and 26th February, was even more charged given the turbulent times in West Asia. Let me unpack it for you and tell you why it all matters. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah received him at the airport, greeting him with open arms. We're talking the Modi hug, broad smiles and that signature bromance which has defined their relationship since 2017. Adding a personal touch, Prime Minister Netanyahu reminisced during their joint press statement about his first date with Sarah at an Indian-Israeli Rina Pushkarna's Indian restaurant in Tel Aviv, making it a memorable evening that led to their marriage. Incidentally, Prime Minister Modi's pocket square matched the color of Sarah Netanyahu's dress when they met at the airport in Tel Aviv. Now, Prime Minister Modi addressed Israel's parliament, becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to do so. It was a masterclass in personal diplomacy, projecting unbreakable bonds amid global scrutiny. Now, on to the outcomes. This trip wasn't about photo ops alone. It delivered a number of agreements spanning everything from defense and artificial intelligence to agriculture and cultural exchange. Now, the key pacts included boosting cooperation in cybersecurity, trade, space, exploration, education, investment, and economic ties, of course. A cyber center of excellence will be established in India as part of the India-Israel Industrial R&D and Technological Innovation Fund, also known as I4F. Now, one standout was an agreement allowing up to 50,000 Indian workers to join Israel's workforce, strengthening the people-to-people links. But perhaps most significant for the diaspora was the move to integrate India's Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, making cross-border transaction easier for the thousands of Indians working in Israel. Now, UPI allows users to instantly transfer money between bank accounts via a mobile app. Now, there were also deals on fintech, digital finance, maritime heritage, manufacturing, and even a push towards a free trade agreement soon. Now, Prime Minister Modi announced these as part of elevating the bilateral ties to a special strategic partnership for peace, innovation, and prosperity, a fancy upgrade from the 2017 strategic partnership. The significance of this visit, especially its timing, couldn't be overstated. It happened smack in the middle of Israel's ongoing war in Gaza, which has left the country isolated internationally. Now, while many nations are distancing themselves from Israel, India is doubling down on its partnership. And Prime Minister Modi's visit reassured Israel that India is a reliable partner when diplomatic options are slim. Now, in a sense, it reaffirms India's transition from a non-aligned actor to an active strategic power. It was a test of New Delhi's foreign policy tightrope walk, balancing strong ties with Israel while maintaining relations with Arab nations in the region. To be sure, Prime Minister Modi used the visit to back the Gaza peace initiative. Now, for Prime Minister Modi, it was also about bolstering India's defense capabilities amid its own border tensions with Pakistan and China. His presence in Israel sent out the message that India stands firm against terrorism, linking its security to stability in West Asia. Now, adding to the strategic depth, Prime Minister Netanyahu floated the idea of a quote-unquote hexagon of alliances ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit. Now, this hexagon of alliances is a proposed network including Israel, India, Greece, Cyprus, and certain unnamed Arab and African countries. It is aimed at countering radical Shia and emerging radical Sunni axes through economic, diplomatic, and security cooperation. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu did not specify which Arab nations or African ones he wants to join this grouping. It could likely include Ethiopia from Africa and an Abraham Accord signatory such as the UAE from the Arab world. The visit also spotlighted ongoing frameworks like the I2U2, a quad grouping of India, Israel, the UAE and the US, focused on joint investments in water, energy, transportation, space, health, food security and technology. And the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, a trade route linking India to Europe via the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Israel, to boost connectivity and counter China's influence. So in a world of shifting alliances, the visit cemented India-Israel as a powerhouse duo. It was diplomacy at its punchiest, direct, unapologetic and forward-looking. How did the Israeli media cover it? Enthusiastically, to say the least. They applauded the shift in India's traditionally cautious foreign policy. The Jerusalem Post was over the moon, praising Prime Minister Modi's no-nonsense stance on terrorism. It featured him prominently on the front page. The Times of Israel provided live updates hailing the romance between Jerusalem and Delhi. The Haaretz newspaper's Gideon Levy told Al Jazeera that the visit cannot be underestimated. Globally, the media buzz was intense and varied. The BBC and the New York Times highlighted the fragile balance India must maintain amid heightened regional tensions and US-Iran friction. Fox News of the US spotlighted the special strategic partnership, calling it an upgrade in ties. The NPR, also of the US, described it as happening at a perilous moment, with Prime Minister Modi boosting India's defense amid regional tensions. Overall, the coverage painted it as a diplomatic coup of sorts. So as we wrap it up, this visit wasn't just a footnote. It was a pivotal moment. It shows India stepping up as a global player, unafraid to deepen ties with Israel even in stormy times. The agreements promised real benefits, from jobs for Indians to tech leaps for both sides. And what's more, it cemented India's position as a rare bridge between Israel and the global south. Moving on, organized crime runs deep in Mexico, where powerful cartels have long challenged the authority of the state. International assessments consistently rank the country among the world's most criminally entrenched nations, underscoring the scale of the crisis. That reality was laid bare once again after security forces killed a dreaded drug lord nicknamed El Mencho. His death triggered an immediate and violent backlash. Cartel gunmen set up roadblocks, burnt vehicles and launched coordinated attacks across several Mexican states. At the center of the operation was El Mencho's girlfriend, whose movements ultimately led authorities to him. Aman Kumar Himanshu reports on how weeks of surveillance and a closely monitored meeting with a little help from the US led to the military raid that finally ended El Mencho's reign.
The two-decade reign of Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, the most elusive and powerful drug kingpin in Mexico's history, came to a violent and cinematic end on 22nd February. Known as El Mencho, the 59-year-old founder of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was killed during a high-stakes military operation in the wooded outskirts of Tapalpa, a mountain resort known southwest of Guadalajara. His death represents the most significant blow to Mexican organized crime since the recapture of Juan King Guzman, also known as El Chapo, nearly a decade ago. But the victory has come at a staggering cost. A wave of retaliatory violence has paralyzed Mexico, leaving dozens dead and entire cities under siege. For years, El Mencho evaded capture by living a shadowy, elusive existence, avoiding the financial traps that brought down his rivals. But despite a $15 million bounty from the United States and an additional $300 million reward from Mexico, it was not money that betrayed him, but a personal connection. Military investigators identified a weak link by tracking a trusted associate of one of El Mencho's romantic partners, identified as Guadalupe Moreno Carrillo. On the night of 20th February, surveillance teams monitored this associate as he escorted Moreno Carrillo to a private cabin complex in the scenic hills of Tapalpa. The breakthrough came the following morning. Once the investigators confirmed that the woman had left the area while El Mencho remained behind with his elite security detail, the military knew that they had the window they had been seeking for years. The operation was a masterclass in military coordination involving the Mexican Army, National Guard, and the Air Force. As elite special forces encircled the wooded compound in the pre-dawn hours, they were met with a wall of lead. Heavily armed gunmen opened fire with rifles and grenade launchers to stall the military advance, allowing their leader a chance to flee. The confrontation mirrored a failed 2015 attempt to capture the kingpin, during which his gunmen used a rocket-propelled grenade to down a military helicopter. In this latest engagement, the intense gunfire forced one Mexican helicopter into another emergency landing. As the battle shifted from the cabins into the dense forest, El Mencho attempted to escape along with two of his bodyguards. All three were eventually wounded and captured by the security forces.
In Jalisco, 6 attacks were recorded, in which 25 members of the National Guard, a prison guard, and an officer from the State Attorney General's office sadly lost their lives. At the hands of these cowardly criminals, a woman lost her life. 30 members of the organized crime, 30 criminals, were also counted among those who lost their lives in these attacks.
Though Mexican authorities attempted to save his life for interrogation, the kingpin died while being airlifted to Mexico City. The killing was a clear success for the Mexican authorities. El Mencho was born on 17 July 1966. He grew up poor, guarded marijuana plantations by age 14, and immigrated illegally to the US in the 1980s. He was arrested multiple times in the US state of California for stolen property, drug sales, and a 1992 heroin bust. He served 3 years in a US government prison and was deported to Mexico twice. Back in Mexico, he built his own cartel to rival the Sinaloa cartel, with a presence in all 50 US states. His estimated net worth ranged from $500 million to over $1 billion. He was a top trafficker of fentanyl into the United States. The elimination of El Mencho has sparked a debate on the extent of involvement of the US in this operation.
All operations are carried out by federal forces. There is no US participation in the operation. What there is, as we have said here several times, is a great deal of information sharing. The understanding with the United States is based primarily on the exchange of intelligence information. In this case, the US government provided information and even issued an intelligence statement. But the entire operation, from planning onwards, is the responsibility of federal forces. In this case, the Ministry of National Defense.
The stunning operation appears to be a major victory in Mexico's new offensive on drug cartels, one that could help reduce pressure on it from United States President Donald Trump, who has been threatening to carry out strikes inside Mexico against the same criminal gangs. But it has plunged the country into chaos as armed groups retaliated in 20 of the country's 32 states. They attacked security forces, blocked highways, and set fire to supermarkets, banks, and vehicles. Videos shared on social media show thick smoke rising over the tourist city of Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco. At least 62 people were killed. Mexico's third busiest airport in Guadalajara ground to a halt, with dozens of flights cancelled as chaos erupted in the city. The US government urged Americans in 5 Mexican states to shelter in place, a travel warning echoed by countries as far away as India.
Well,
it's a situation. On one hand, it's definitely a strong blow to organized crime. However, we also have to recognize that the damage they cause us as citizens is huge. For example, there are curfews, buses being burned. It's really unfortunate what's happening, and we hope the authorities soon take control of the situation.
Mexico's decision to destroy the most wanted criminal was driven by intense geopolitical pressure. and a desire to dismantle the leadership of El Mencho's cartel, which had become Mexico's most powerful criminal gang. The order followed repeated and loud demands from the US president for Mexico to dismantle those cartels. Besides, Trump had threatened that if Mexico did not act, the US military might intervene directly, a threat that had become more pointed after he ordered a military intervention in Venezuela. Analysts suggest that President Sheinbaum used this external pressure to pivot away from her predecessor's hugs, not bullets approach, which many felt had fractured the US-Mexico security relationship and allowed the violence to rise. The operation was a bold swing intended to show that she had emerged from the political shadow and was willing to engage in high-stakes security engagement. The US government had been pushing for some aggressive action against El Mencho's cartel because they are considered top traffickers of fentanyl in the United States. The US had designated the cartel as a foreign terrorist organization in 2025.
For years, large swaths of territory in our region, including large parts of Mexico, really large parts of Mexico, have been controlled by murderous drug cartels. That's why I designated these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and I declared illicit fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. And with our new military campaign, we have stopped record amounts of drugs coming into our country and virtually stopped it completely coming in by water or sea. You probably noticed that. We've also taken down one of the most sinister cartel kingpins of all. You saw that yesterday.
Following the killing of the drug lord, the violence was so widespread that 4 high-profile football matches had to be postponed. The Mexican army conducted operations near Tapalpa, a town close to Guadalajara, one of the host cities of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The city is scheduled to host 4 World Cup games in June, including 2 involving South Korea. Mexico, the co-host of the tournament, as well as Spain, Uruguay and Colombia, will also play at the Akron Stadium in the city. The retaliatory violence has instilled fear and panic in a major World Cup host city. Security analysts have raised questions regarding the Mexican government's capacity to manage the consequences of such high-stakes operations while ensuring safety for international events. But the chief of football governing body that organizes soccer events all over the world expressed confidence in Mexico's government.
Of course, we are analyzing and monitoring the situation in Mexico these days, at this moment, but I want to say from the beginning that we have total confidence in Mexico, in its president Sheinbaum, in the authorities, and we are convinced that everything will turn out in the best possible way.
En México, en su presidenta Sheinbaum.
While El Mencho's son El Menchito, his brother and his daughter La Negra, all currently in prison, there is no clear heir to the throne. This leadership vacuum could lead to a civil war within the cartel as the regional lieutenants compete for control of the organization's multi-billion-dollar fentanyl revenue streams. Analysts caution that such fragmentation may lead to a surge in violent clashes on Mexico's streets. Although President Sheinbaum has assured her people that the country remains under control, for now Mexico remains on high alert. The capture and death of El Mencho may have closed one chapter in the country's criminal history, but as the fall of El Chapo before him demonstrated, removing a single kingpin rarely ends the war. The struggle for dominance over the nation's drug trade and for the streets of Mexico is far from over. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
And with that, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.